Hi everyone, welcome to our event tonight celebrating Melanie Abrams and Larry Smith right here in the flesh, celebrating their book, The Joy of Cannabis. Let's give another hand for welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park, and thank you for joining us in person here at the store and online from wherever you are online. I have very brief business to tell you before we get to the very fun and lively part of the evening. First, please do check out our event calendar on our website at greenapplebooks.com. Thank you too for keeping your masks on during our event. We're all very close together and we're trying to just move forward safer. You'll also notice that we have refreshments, which we do want you to imbibe from. So we're trying to be safer and celebratory. We ask that you keep your masks on between sips of beverage. And also we want to give our authors the grace to not wear masks during the event. So thank you for being cool about it, because COVID is still a thing and it sucks. I didn't vote for it. Thank you also for purchasing a copy of our featured author's book this evening from your friendly independent bookstore. We have copies of the books at the front register. You can buy them there, bring them back here at the end of the event for our authors to sign. I'm assuming they'll sign them for you. If I'm terribly mistaken, tell me now. Okay.
What author won't?
We'll sign all your stuff.
Fantastic. Even other people's books. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the two authors joining us this evening. First, Melanie Abrams is the author of the novels Playing and Meadowlark. She's an editor and photographer who currently teaches writing at the University of California, Berkeley. She lives in Oakland, California with her husband, writer Vikram Chandra, and their daughters. Please welcome Melanie Abrams. Larry Smith is founder and editor of the personal storytelling community Smith Magazine and the creator of the 6-Word Memoir Project. Larry lives in Berkeley, California with his wife, writer Piper Kerman, and their son. Please give a warm welcome to Larry Smith.
Thank you, Car, and thank you, Olivia, for helping set this up. One of Melanie's former students, right? Yeah. So, this is, first of all, my first stop in San Francisco when I moved here in the 90s, it was like the original Green Apple, like total second home, did book events there. So just it's really great to be back here and back to the Bay. And just like in this group, I see people from like where I grew up, and my sister, and Laura Mazer, our agent, who's fantastic, and Jim, who I met the first day of college, or the first week of college. So it's pretty great, friends from home, just to have this group here. And let's see, we have postcards.
Yeah, so on your chairs or around the space, there are postcards on here. And we're gonna have a Q&A later, and small enough that, of course, you're totally welcome to like just shout out your question. But if it's like, you don't want it recorded, we don't want to know that it's from you, go ahead and write the question on there and you can pass it up and we'll ask anonymous questions, just like 7th grade health class. Yeah.
So the good news is, I know you've all been to a lot of readings, the good, the bad, and the long, but our reading is a book event without a lot of reading. We're going to talk a lot about cannabis, we're going to take your questions, but to give you a really good sense of what the joy of cannabis is all about, Melanie will read from the introduction.
What if there was a safe and increasingly legal substance that could make you happier, more productive, and more creative? What if we told you this substance was not actually a substance, but a flower? One with all natural powers that make music even more beautiful, food even more delicious, and sex even sexier. This magical flower, one that is both 2,000 years old and also in the midst of a renaissance, is cannabis.
I blew the drum roll last night, so I'm really happy.
And in this book, we're going to tell you where it's from, where it's going, and above all, how you can use it to amplify almost any part of your life. In the second decade of the second millennium, the stigma of being a slacker stoner is gone. This book is for the new breed of cannabis appreciators, smart and functional adults who enjoy an entertaining inebriant and are rapidly realizing its wide array of benefits. It's for the millions of people who already know, or are quickly finding out, all the amazing things cannabis can do for their creativity and productivity, their heads and their hearts. In the pages that follow, we identify 6 key pillars of life in the form of 6 sections of the book and discuss how cannabis can amplify each. By expanding the mind, moving the body, sparking creativity, boosting productivity, fortifying meaningful connections, and sparking joy, you'll soon see how life can be higher and happier through the science and magic of cannabis. Each section begins with a reported introduction that takes a deep dive, relaying the science and stats with, we hope, comforting clarity. We've also enlisted a number of bold thinkers to share their expertise on how getting high can rekindle and enhance everything from gardening to yoga to rediscovering your inner child, sometimes with your actual child. As cannabis becomes even more optimized, safe, and legal, millions of new users are discovering its benefits. To you, we say welcome. We are delighted to be your cannabis concierges. For the other readers who've been enjoying herb for years, we know what you're thinking. How can the joy of cannabis be contained in just one book? We feel you on that, friends, and still, like so many of life's pleasures, all things in moderation. Cannabis has changed our lives. We hope it changes yours.
Thank you, Melanie. It really has changed our lives, and the story of this book is the story of a chance meeting. I'd moved back to the Bay 2019, and a couple months later, I was pretty much the last person invited to this woman, so the woman I'd met at a NaNoWriMo event, literary event, to the Christmas party. And she's the kind of person just likes to bring people together, new people, whatever. And I walk into this party, 2019 in the Bay Area, and I see like the one other person I know, and I go over there, and a bunch of us are talking, and including Melanie. Melanie's over there. And Melanie says, hey, does anyone want to go out on the deck and get high? And in 2019 in the Bay Area, that should not be a controversial question. And I was the only one who raised my hand and said yes. And so, and I'm like, what's your name again, ma'am? And so we go out to the deck, and we started talking. We talked about what it's like to move back to the Bay Area, and kids, and a lot about the Beatles, and we got high. And Melanie and I are not what women call inhibited people. I can't that word. The word doesn't even. I don't know that word, right? I mean, we don't have a lot of filters around here, but cannabis does open you up even more. And we're just talking and talking and talking. And though we did not know it yet on that moment at the deck, but it was the spark of a conversation that would lead to writing this book, which is really a love letter to cannabis.
And it's a love letter to a flower whose time has come, right? And in the book we talk about how this is the golden age of cannabis. And one of the reasons we say that is because in 39 states now, cannabis is legal either recreationally or medical, and more states are happening all the time. But there still is this stigma associated with cannabis. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to write this book was we wanted to be part of the normalization movement of cannabis, so that when in the media, you see people, they come home after a long day and they have a cocktail and it's totally normal. We want cannabis to, if that's what you enjoy, be able to imbibe cannabis and have it be totally normal. And this was particularly important for me to destigmatize this plant, because I don't drink. It just doesn't do good for things for my body. And when my kids were little, there was all these, you had these play dates or, parents gathering, and there was lots of alcohol and this whole mommy juice and rosé all day. And I was always like, why am I the wild, weird one who's the outlier, right, for using something that's been around for thousands of years and that is exponentially better for you than alcohol? So I really, really wanted to create a book. We wanted to create a book that is this beautiful, beautiful book that you could put in your coffee table. And one of the reasons why is to help this normalization movement. Yeah,
and it really mattered that it was a book you feel good to put on your desk, your coffee table, wherever people read books. And when there's a lot of writers in this room, and when you're writing a book, you're talking about it with friends, parties, dinner, and people ask you lots of questions, it's a good sign, right? They are interested. And people had so many questions like, well, I've heard cannabis can help with my anxiety, or pain, or sleep. Will cannabis help me reconnect with my partner, my parent, my long-lost friend? There are so many ways to take it. What should I do? Should I smoke it? Should I eat it? Should I put a patch on my arm? Should I put it under my tongue? Should I use a bowl? Should I try an edible? A dab? Anyone done a dab? Yeah, don't. I mean, that might be, that it took me over the top. Is everyone in Silicon Valley really working high? Sort of. We will answer some of those questions tonight, and of course take your questions. There's really a lot. The other fun part of us is just taking questions, hearing what you're interested in, and she's like Lucy at the advice table. She's got all the specifics about what to do and when, But first, we're going to talk about some frequently asked questions that have come up in the book. And the book is broken down into basically two main parts. The first part is called the toolkit. It is Cannabis 101 in a box. What if you Googled cannabis and these questions on the internet? You would get a lot. So what if we took all the best parts of that, plus our research and experience, put that in a box? Cannabis 101. That's it, 33 pages. And the second part is these 6 pillars of life: connection, creativity, mind, body, etc. And activities within each of those pillars to use with the cannabis can help you amplify. Fun, thoughtful, weird. We'll talk about them.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a little preview of the toolkit and a little preview of the activities. But first of all, I'm going to talk about what it's called, how you do it, and like how it's working in your body and your brain. So the first one, what it is. Well, obviously, we know it's cannabis. We'll talk about why we're calling it cannabis and not marijuana a little bit later. But like, I'm just curious, other things that you've heard it called, like obviously Mary Jane, reefer. But like, I'm always interested in the weirdest one. Like, who has a weird one?
Wacky tobacco.
The wacky tobacco, that's a good one. Any others?
When I was a child, I smelled it at a screening of 2001, and my parents told me it was Italian food.
Oh,
Italian
so
food.
now you're like, when you talk to your drug dealer, like, can I get some of that Italian food?
It's the Italian food.
Yeah.
For too many years, I would smell it someplace and be like, oh, Italian food.
Daniel, it's funny, I hadn't thought about this in a while, but my first time I asked about cannabis, I think my sister Susie knows this, my older sister, her 16th birthday, we were going to the Fleetwood Mac and Steve Miller concert at a big stadium in Philly, and I was kind of there for Steve Miller, being 13, and I said to my parents, why are people passing around this tiny scissors with a cigarette on it? It was a roach. And my parents were like, isn't it? And these are not people who were like hip in the 70s, So they explained what it was, and I was like, huh. And thus began a long love for cannabis.
Yeah.
So
I think the weirdest one that we heard while we were writing this book, I think it's in the book, is Shrek's pubes. Right? That's pretty awesome. All right, but really it's a plant. That's the amazing thing. This is a plant, and it's thousands of years old, and it's evolved with humans over time, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But like any plant, it has a stalk, it has leaves, it has a bud or a flower, and that flower is like what I want to talk a little bit about. So part of our event tonight, there's audience participation. You could win a prize, and I'll say right now our prizes are really good.
Good
So
prizes.
we are partnering with Kiva, which is the biggest edible company, in the country, and so they have supplied some pretty awesome prizes in addition to some lovely swag that you could win. So this is the first prize worthy question for you. So the one thing that people usually think they know about cannabis is that it's either indica, a sativa, or a hybrid. So I'm curious, what is the difference between an indica and a sativa? Anyone? What a prize.
Okay, indica, right? It's supposed to be like way more chill. It gives you couch lock and stuff. And then sativa, you can work on it. It makes you more creative, gives you energy. But indica makes you tired. That's it.
So you would win the prize anyway because you volunteered. And you particularly, though, are winning the prize. Good job.
Thank you.
Because of a word that you may not even have known that you threw into that answer, which was supposedly. Because the truth is that there's this the rumors are, or the word on the street is that sativas bring you up. It's an energizing, cerebral high. Indicas bring you down, relaxing. They can give you couch lock, and hybrids are somewhere in between. But the truth is that may have been true 40 years ago, but everything has become so crossbred that it's just not true anymore. Unless you're sending your strain to a lab to be tested, it's almost impossible to know if something's a pure indica or a pure sativa, which is why it's super important important when you go to your local dispensary and to ask your bud tender, right, the official name for your drug dealer, for something that will give you the effects that you're after. Because there's a lot more that goes into cannabis than just whether it's a sativa or an indica. And two of those things are cannabinoids and terpenes, and I'll tell you a little bit about those two. So cannabinoids, there's over 100 of them. Almost none of them have been studied. They're just starting to. There's, a handful that have. The most popular one is THC. That's what's giving you the psychoactive, effects that when you get high, what you feel high is from the THC. But a lot of you obviously have now heard of CBD, right? CBD, for example, is a great one because if any of you are like, I don't really like getting high because it makes me anxious, which is I hear a lot. Usually it's because either the THC is too high or there's not enough CBD. So CBD can counteract the THC. So if you're someone who gets anxious, it's good to say to your bud tender, I tend to get anxious. I need something that won't make me anxious. So cannabinoids. The second thing is terpenes. So terpenes are interesting. So all plants have terpenes. Terpenes are oils that are found in plants. So like if you go up to a lavender plant and you rub it between your fingers, and you smell that amazing smell that is so relaxing, that's the terpenes in lavender. So that's why when you walk into a spa, you have that smell, that lavendery smell. They're trying to relax you. So terpenes are also in cannabis, including linalool. So if you want to be relaxed, your bud tender might point you to a strain that has linalool in it. So, and in our book, we actually have a whole terpene chart, which tells you what different terpenes give you different effects. So how to do it. So tons of delivery systems, and we go over those in the book. My favorite one is I'm like all flower all the time, or like when I'm consuming cannabis, I like to light my flower on fire. My associate here enjoys an edible. But it's interesting because it's not just because he likes this like chocolate caramel kifa terabyte particularly, although the taste is pretty good. It's because the way that the cannabis works in your body, whether it's smoked or ingested, is very different. I brought in like a bud right now, freshly picked off a plant and ate it, I would have very little to no psychoactive effects. And that's because THC needs heat in order to turn into THC before it's THCA. And so the molecule that it turns into when you heat it on fire versus the molecule that it turns into when you're the farm creates an edible out of it, it turns into a different molecule. So for me, I don't like edibles because that molecule in my body doesn't feel the same way that the molecule when I smoke something. So that's another reason why knowing what works for your body is super important.
And, Mel, I just want to say that cannabis, while thousands of years old, it's sort of new in our lifetimes. In a way, it's been legal for most of our lifetime. But imagine you were like, oh, I walk into a bar and I will have a beer, right? There's so many kinds of beer. We know how to do that now, right? But it's not like that. And beer does sort of taste like when we say cannabis, so many people understandably think it's all going to do the same thing. It depends on your body, the way you it's an edible or flower or a tincture or a patch. And so I get a lot of, and it's fine if you don't want to do it. I'm not here to push drugs. But but I get a lot of, I had a bad experience in college. It's that's like saying I had a beer in high school and I threw up. It just, and who cares, right? Except, it's certainly like alcohol, except there are so many benefits if you know how to use cannabis thoughtfully and you do a little trial and error. There's a lot that good things that can happen, and in a way that you can't with alcohol.
So then the last piece of the toolkit that I want to talk about is how it works in your body. So this is, we get asked in interviews and stuff, what's the most interesting thing you learned? And this is it. This was mind-blowing to me. So a lot of people think that cannabis releases dopamine and serotonin, and that's what makes you high, makes you feel good. And it does release dopamine and serotonin, but not in the amounts that are going to make you feel high. That's how opiates work. And for a long time, researchers thought that's how cannabis worked. But that isn't how it works at all. So what's amazing is that right now, within our bodies, exists a molecular system that works so perfectly with cannabis that it was named after cannabis. So, and we didn't even learn about this until 1988. So there was two scientists who were researching how THC worked in the brain. And what they discovered is that there were receptors in the brain that were not only activated by cannabinoids, like THC, but they were activated by naturally occurring cannabinoids called endocannabinoids, meaning within the body. So right now your bodies are producing cannabis-like compounds right now. And one of our favorite endocannabinoids is this thing called anandamide, and the reason it's called anandamide is named after the Sanskrit word ananda, which means joy. And it's good for enhancing mood, it diminishes fear, and anandamide and THC, right, THC makes you joyful, are so similar that they bind to the same receptors and they have the similar effects. You're not going to get high from anandamide, that's why we're not walking around feeling like we do when we're high all the time with anandamide, but it's similar. And that to me was just like mind-blowing. And another reason that this discovery was so exciting is that one of the things our endocannabinoid system does is it keeps our body in a state of homeostasis. So our blood sugar is regulated, our temperature is regulated, and that's all by endocannabinoids. So it stands to reason that if endocannabinoids are doing that, then cannabinoids can do that as well. So researchers are really looking at all of the things that cannabinoids can do. I mean, we know it's still considered a Schedule I drug, which is why there hasn't been enough research on this, but things are rapidly changing. So it's an exciting time for cannabis.
It is, and so for the layman, such as myself, Melanie is so good at explaining the science, and she is a professor.
Not for science.
Not for science, it comes down to this. Cannabis decreases inhibitions, it increases focus, and my favorite, it puts you in the moment. And it also does something else, which is that, why does it put you in the moment? We hear sometimes that cannabis can make you forget things, right? It kind of does. It makes you forget things for a little while to put you in the moment. And for that, I need my glasses. I want to read. This is just so good. So there's a guy named Michael Pollan, most of us like, and it's really been just incredible for writing about drugs and their benefits and writing clearly. And he wrote this over 20 years ago in The Botany of Desire, and as always, he was way ahead of the game and so right on. Here's what he says. It is the relentless moment by moment forgetting that helps us account for the sharpening of sensory perceptions, for the aura of profundity in which cannabis bathes the most ordinary insights, and perhaps most important of all, for the sense that time has slowed down or even stopped. So that is why, when you're high, nature is more beautiful, food is tastier, music slows down and sounds even better, and I promise you, with the right strain and the right person, high cannabis is the secret to the universe.
High sex.
Oh, high sex. High sex. High cannabis, right. Yes, I was thinking, my head was somewhere else, obviously. High sex, figure it out, trust me, it's the answer.
Whatever gets you there.
Yeah, right. Which brings us to the second part of the book, which is the activities. We're going to share one of our favorite activities, each of us, from the book. But I also, and totally obviously,
I think I just shared mine.
Calling out. We also, along with the activities in the book, we also have these guest essays. Sorry, Alia, this is the little moment where, and Alia Bowles, who's right here, has an amazing one of my favorite essay in the book. It's called Stoning the Elders, about getting high with, the elders and like connecting. And so we have these little essays placed throughout. So,
It's beautiful.
It's a really good one. It's my favorite one. Okay, so the activity. So we thought we'd share our favorite activity with you. So for me, my favorite activity, it comes in mind, it's number 17, and it's play with kids. And now nobody's advocating picking up carpool, like hi. But a little bit of cannabis at the end of the day can make cooking dinner better, maybe helping with homework more pleasurable. But more than that, that thing that Larry was talking about before, of really putting you in the moment and allowing you to like focus and just be with your children, is why I love doing a little bit of cannabis with kids. You suddenly realize how extraordinary your little humans are and how beautiful they are. And then if you add arts and crafts, I recommend Play-Doh or magic markers, especially the ones that smell. You are getting all the creative boost of cannabis, plus being in the moment and doing something with your kids that you love and that they love.
in many ways my favorite, but it's just one I like to talk about is I believe activity number 40 in productivity, and and that is green cleaning. Cleaning high. So I love to clean generally, but I love to clean high, and I'm so in the zone, right? And as we were talking to people about this book, what do you like to do? I heard from a bunch of people they too like to clean high for the same reason. So we are not alone, And so invite me over to your house. Give me an edible and a dustbuster, and I will go to town. I'm here all week. And so, yeah. Oh, right. So, our favorite activity actually is so good. We need 3 activities. Activities 37, 38, and 39. It's in connection, and you'll have to buy the book to find out what it is. Yeah. So, FAQs?
Yeah.
Okay. So some questions we got asked a lot, and then we'll hear your questions. So, what's the question you'd like to ask me, Melanie?
I would like to ask you the question is, why don't you use marijuana in the book?
Question. So, we use the term cannabis almost exclusively in the book, and there's a reason. So, cannabis is the scientific term for the plant, the flower, and so, but a lot of us know this as marijuana, other things. So the origin of the term marijuana is based in racist laws. It's the 1930s, and the Federal Bureau of Narcotics has just been, the first one has been created. And there's this guy named Harry Anslinger who is the first one. Right, boo, exactly, a jerk. And so, meanwhile, think about the 30s. Prohibition is about to be overturned, right? So, okay, you have a job, you need something to do, to something to give you power in a bully pulpit. So he conflated a couple of things. There's a lot of immigration from Mexico at this time, right? So there's some racist, xenophobic stuff, sound familiar, right? And he's like, oh, I can say that the Mexicans are coming with their marijuana, the Spanish word for cannabis, and they're coming in and ruining minds, and jazz musicians are using it now. He actually went after Billie Holiday, she couldn't sing anymore because of that. So, and then in 1937, basically, cannabis, marijuana was made illegal, and but marijuana, the term stuck. And it's only in the last, maybe 20 years that cannabis has come back as the preferred term for a lot of people. It does not mean if you say marijuana, you're racist. It's just that let's get back to the way it was, the scientific term, and let's try to push away that ugly past.
All right. This one's going to be a question for you, but the audience
420?
might have a, yeah.
Oh.
Why is 420 called 420? Anyone?
Oh, this is a prize situation.
Yeah, it's a prize situation.
Yeah.
It was like a group of college kids or something. They would all smoke at 420. It was just like.
Marin County.
No, High School.
Okay. You guys are good.
Yeah, you guys are good.
Summerville High School, and they go and they smoke out, like Cheech and Chong, but they had an epic quest to find a stash cannabis that they never found.
So you're all right.
Yeah,
You're
the
all
first,
right.
I mean,
Yeah, okay. The other ones?
Do we all get out?
What? Oh, the prize. Okay, yeah.
I'm forgive me.
So you're all kind of right. So group of high school students in San Rafael, they met, they heard there was a stash, and there was a Louis Pasteur statue, vaccines, milk, and so the code was Louis 420. We'll meet there today and go work on our treasure map, right, to find the stash, right? And now one of the guys, his brother was friends with Phil Lesh, the drummer of the Grateful Dead. So the Dead started using it. That's how from San Rafael High School does it get to the whole world, right? So that's how that got around, and 420 became 420. The stash. Was the stash found? It was not. But you know what? A stash of grass will run out, but at some point 420 was put into the Oxford English Dictionary, and the OED is forever. So
Oh yeah. I'm gonna give that prize to Olivia because she was my student, really. And like, what could be better than giving your own student weed?
I'll give you guys some.
But actually,
I know what's better.
What?
Yesterday, you signed a book to a kid you used to babysit for, who's now 30. So that's maybe better. Yeah.
But interesting enough, you all got it. But there's been some amazing kind of rumors on what 420 is. So it is. What are the other
things you
what
heard
is it
that aren't
not?
true?
Or, yeah.
Like cops.
The police code, right?
It's not the police
It's
code.
the devil the code, so that's not true. What else?
Something about like the chemical being 420. I heard something about
Ooh,
Yeah,
420
cannabinoid.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was.
It's also not Bob Marley's
It's
birthday.
not Bob Marley's birthday.
And
This
what
is the
it's
greatest
really
one.
not
This is
Bob Dylan's legendary "Everybody Must Get Stoned" refrain from "Rainy Day Woman" number 12 and 35, because 12 multiplied by 35 equals 420. It's not that either.
Yeah. People have too much time on it. So yeah.
Okay, so there's one more prize opportunity before we open up to your questions. And that is, how many people have died from consumption of cannabis?
You're
You in the black mask. That's right. You win our last prize.
Why is that?
So, and I'll tell you why. So, you would have to consume 15,000 pounds of cannabis within 15 minutes to die of an overdose of cannabis. It's never been done. It never will. So, yes, congratulations. All right, so we'll open it up to you. I mean, first of all, if anybody wants to write a question on a card, and say, here, I'm going to put these two markers out here instead if you don't want to ask, but...
You're shy because your parents are watching the YouTube stream.
Exactly.
You know.
What questions do we have? Yeah.
Are you both stoned now?
Well, what's your definition of stoned? So,
I really love,
Yeah.
like, you hear the phrase microdosing and people suddenly think we're on acid. So microdosing is a very popular, not now, not
Yes,
today,
he's high.
a very popular phrase. So I like little bits of edibles. So I took 2.5 milligrams about an hour ago.
yeah, I took 2.5
Because I feel like I'm in the
too.
zone.
And so, and also, you know, like he said before,
Edible as well?
edible as well, which I am an anti-edible person. This is very out of character. But I'm not, you know, like he was talking about peanuts, Lucy, 5 cents advice. That's my like stupid party trick, is like, you tell me what you want to feel, I'll like doctor it for you. But 2.5 is a very, very low. Like for some people that they can really feel it. But for me, it almost is just like a slight focusing of, yeah. I like that question. What else?
If you're having a bad experience, is there anything you can do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple things. Have a friend hold your hand. Drink lots of water. Hydrating. Yeah, exactly. Hydrating. Okay, so the three are hydrate, take a hot bath, and then also if you have any CBD gummies. Or a strain that's pure CBD, which you can get, that has no THC in it. CBD counteracts THC; they neutralize each other. So it's good to have that. And also know that it's going to pass.
Time heals everything.
Yeah.
You did mention the dabs, and don't go there. What I mean,
I just felt like I was like the one thing that I'm kidding. The one thing I hadn't really tried before was a dab. And had you tried a dab? I can't remember.
Then no.
I just thought it was like a super bong. I don't know.
What's a dab?
Go ahead.
A dab is it's okay. So you know we talk about there's many ways to consume cannabis, and one is like if you've ever vaped, you know they turn it into an oil. So they can also turn it into what's called a concentrate. They're taking like a refined hash oil kind of. And what you do is it's like, to be totally honest, it's like smoking crack.
It looks like that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean like you take a tiny bit of this dab of resin and you put it on like literally a heated piece of metal that you actually heat with a blowtorch.
Wow.
And you inhale the smoke.
Just felt a little Breaking Bad to me. And it's like, but the resin is like that last bit of the ice cream. It's like the best little part. It's very concentrated, you know, and you get super high. So I don't know. I was just back to edibles for me. What other questions?
Did you guys do any research on like cannabis lube?
Yes,
World.
we have a section in the book on how to make cannabis lube.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about anything that you're putting on your skin, though, like cannabis lube, is that, or oils or lotions, is that you're not going to get high. So it is not. And this is the one piece of the science I need to check. It's not water soluble or fat soluble. I can't. Some medical person tell me. Whatever. It's not going to go through the skin barrier to get to the bloodstream, so you're not going to actually get high. But lube is interesting because what it can do is it can send blood to it's a vasodilator, so it can send blood to wherever you are putting your massage oil or lube. So it can send blood to that region and have tingly effects, but it isn't going to make you high.
Have you tried it?
A little bit.
No, actually. No, that's one of the things we haven't done.
Tried all the rest.
I know, we've
My parents are definitely watching. I really no comment. We've really done most of the activities.
We have.
Yeah.
Lisa?
There was a scare a couple of years ago about vaping THC.
Yeah.
What do you know about that?
Yeah.
I mean, here's what I know. Well, I know that when you're vaping, it's just so easy to keep hitting that thing. And when you're a teen or when and it just feels a little. If you don't know what you're doing, it's coming in fast, and that makes me nervous. But go ahead.
So what Lisa's talking about though is that there were vape cartridges that were not sold through dispensaries that were tainted with butane, other chemicals and that obviously was causing severe lung damage. So yes. Do not buy your vape cartridges from the guy on the corner. Get it from a real dispensary where everything is regulated. Yeah.
What's up with K2 and synthetic cannabis?
Right. Well, so for pharmaceutical purposes or for us consuming it? Yeah, that's a really new thing that I just read about super recently. One of the problems with that, I mean, the question is is it? My understanding is that they can create THC, but not all the whole profile that goes into the cannabis, and that's why when I was talking about the cannabinoids and the terpenes and other things that we don't necessarily know about that's contributing to your high when you're consuming the plant, it's super different than just consuming that one molecule. So some of you might have heard of the entourage effect. Budtenders are really into talking about this, and that's because we know that THC makes you high, but there's all this other stuff that's there's also contributing to your experience. And so when you don't consume the whole plant, you're losing out on a lot of that.
I have a question. Who here has been inside a dispensary? Inside? Just going to a dispensary. Okay, interesting. Anyone? Well, one of the reasons we really wrote this book is because my sister Susie, because I was kind of work this in.
Almost me.
I know. No, but it's actually very much the truth. So I have struggled with sleep for years, right? And there's lots of ways to work with that. But I was for a long time trying to figure out, if cannabis would work, and you try different things, and it just took a while, right? And in fact, when we started researching this book and I got to know even more about, deeper down the rabbit hole, I found one that worked for me, worked really well for sleep. So I called Susie and I said, it turns out we have a lot of the same DNA and pretty much the same sleep problems, so you should try this. And she said to me, great, we'll bring it in. I'm in East Bay, she's in the city. And this was early pandemic when we were all afraid to move. And she's like, bring it in next time you'll be in. I'm like, I don't know if I'll be in for maybe 10 days or 2 weeks. But according to Yelp, there are 3 dispensaries within half a mile of your place. And this one has 25% off for first-time users. So go to that one. And she said to me a question which we hear a lot and totally understandable. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to walk into dispensaries. Seem to either look like an Apple store or like a Philly liquor store at the other end of things, And so dispensaries for a lot of people, it feels like in the 80s you would walk into a video store in LA and Quentin Tarantino was working behind the counter and he's making you feel really bad for your choices, right? And it's intimidating. So, and that's just a really basic thing because if you don't feel comfortable at the dispensary, you know what to do in there, you've really limited your options. You're back to Washington Square Park in the dime bag, so we can't go back there. I mean, Ali has more to say on this, but anyway, so so one of our things is how to navigate a dispensary, and we talk to people who own dispensaries. Steve Giangelo, considered the father of legal cannabis, probably no one more important, certainly in the Bay, for this movement. We talked to him and he said, look, when you're new to this, go into one of these fancy Apple Store dispensaries like mine, right? And bud tenders really know what they're doing. And don't go at 5 p.m. on Friday if you want to talk to these people, or even when they first open necessarily. Go middle of the day if you can. They have nothing but time to talk to you then, right? And then he said, this is great, he said, and once you figure it out, go to the cheaper places. You're paying for this service and this kind of thing. And he also, not all dispensaries keep the flower part, which is basically, when we're calling the bud, that you can smell. A lot of it's like behind glass, and he's like, we keep them out because your nose knows. The way, like, I know what coffee I like if I smell the coffee. If something smells good to you, that's a good indicator that you'll like it, or not good to you. So that's one thing he does. And it's just, I just feel like that's just, we talk about the normalization of this. These are just, we know how to walk into a bar, how to order a drink, right? So again, these things are part of the building blocks of making this as common as anything, and not everything is for everyone.
I have a question for you, though.
Yes, ma'am.
That we got on a card that I want to make sure you answer. What could cannabis have to do with the Jews? Noting the ethnicity of both authors.
I'm not sure how I feel about that problem, but okay, so first of all, what does cannabis, and we have a little bit about this in the book, but cannabis, it can relieve pain, help with sleep, right? Nausea. Basically, anxiety. These are Jewish traits, and I think general source. Cannabis helps with that. So cannabis is good for the Jews. But get this, who discovered the endocannabinoid system? Jews in Israel, And this is a major breakthrough. We have this thing in our body. We didn't know about this till like 1988, and it took about 3 years to get the research down. So that's interesting, but we actually have an essay by this great rabbi named Amichai Lalave, who he wrote an essay called "High for the Holidays." Because I know he uses, and he's such a thoughtful guy. And I said, is there a sort of a backstory? And he explains, that in fact, cannabis, cannabisum, I think if I'm getting that right, the phonetic, was a Jewish herb that was very popular in thousands of years ago, and it was part of the spice set. And it was part of the spice set that Moses was told to give instructed to give an offering to God. So cannabis goes back to the Torah, and it popped up to discover the endocannabinoid system. And in between pain, anxiety, sleep, and nausea, friends, cannabis is good for the Jews.
What else can we tell you?
How hard is it to write or pitch a book about drugs?
Great question.
Laura Mazer? No. Our agent just happens to be here.
Well, I'll tell you a couple stories. Oh, first off, the pitching. Hi, all the big publishers. Cannabis is super hot, and there's a lot on it, but there's not a book like ours, the Joy of Cooking or the Joy of Sex of Cannabis. Imagine that for a good wedding present. Joy of Cooking, Joy of Sex, Joy of Cannabis. That's fun. And so a bunch of editors that Laura Mazer here, our hero and super agent, said, look, that sounds good. She knew who to go to. And here's what would happen when they would pass it up for approval. They'd say things like, well, we have a book about cannabis coming out next fall. Okay, how many
Next year.
Next year.
Yeah.
How many books do you have coming out about wine or vodka, right?
Yeah.
I love it, but the head of the department in my big major publishing house, which rhymes with Andam Rouse, said, we're just too square. What? Right. So these are we're fighting. This is what's happening. And though source books just thought it was a book that was needed, and they really made it was really important to Jim, hold up a page with one of these great to make it. They really felt to look beautiful, to really make it look beautiful. They're great illustrations, all sorts of bodies, all sorts of types of people.
How did you choose the font on the cover?
The font chose us, and that's a story for another time.
We'll tell you at the Shamrock.
Yeah, exactly. But how about the writing process?
I mean, it was mostly fun. I mean, I'm a very serious literary novelist, and this is the most fun I've ever written, had reading a book.
I brought her down to my level.
Exactly. I mean, this was like way funner than any other writing I've ever done. So writing about, I mean, you know, you've got to love your subject if you're going to be writing about it.
I mean, and I really think it's like, we know a bunch about this, but we have more curiosity and knowledge to learn than we have knowledge, like most people can. So we got to like talk to all these people, do all this research, and we just kind of like, this world opened up to us. It started out as like, the book got more and more serious in terms of like the really like how important this safe and increasingly illegal drug that was only been illegal for like 70 years. There's thousands of years before and hopefully thousands after. It's a weird blip we live in. It makes no sense. It is a naturally growing plant. It's not synthetic. Your liver doesn't get rid of cannabis the way it does liquor. You know, it's just a blip we live in. That I just hope that this is over soon. You know, we get federal legalization. And it was really fun to write together. We write very different styles. We actually wrote very little of the book high, but things like, we did a chart. What movie should I watch? We did that one high, you know. And the Munchy Madness like chart. You know, some of the goofier stuff, but the science is sober, man.
I have a question. How would you counsel teenage boys that are, you know, like having developing brains?
Yep.
For like good use of cannabis?
Yeah.
We decided not to bring ours to the event. That was the first council that we
Well, yeah. So, I mean, you know, all the research supports that the frontal lobe is not fully developed until 25. And so we definitely do not advocate the use of cannabis before 25. That said, teenagers, I have one.
I have one who's
yeah.
about to be 12.
Yeah. And they're going to do things that they're not supposed to do. They're going to drink. They're going to probably use cannabis. And I would say, you know, open, honest communication and destigmatizing this is the best thing, because obviously teenagers love the forbidden fruit. And just knowing that, you know, like when I talk to my kids, I'm like, this is not something you should do before you're 25, frontal lobe, etc. I understand that you may do it. So hopefully you're going to do it intentionally, responsibly, and you're going to talk to me about what you're doing.
And then you hand them the book. Let me just ask, is there a strain that makes them more productive?
Well, here's a little, they're probably doing it to be less productive. But yeah, right. I mean, I guess the hard thing for teenagers is the same thing coming back to this vape thing, is that they can't, I talked to people who were like, my kid says, will you buy me cannabis? And they said, I cannot legally buy you cannabis, but then I will end up getting it from somewhere I don't know where it's from. It is like a conundrum, because you don't want to be advocating. You obviously aren't buying it for that. But
it's true. I mean, I think similar things to alcohol, if it's demystified and not like this, you know, like, I'm going to break into the liquor cabinet because you locked it. And like, you know, every house is different and kids are different, but like, that's, if it's something that adults do safely. The other thing is, if your kid insists on getting high before you're 25, just be like, here's the vacuum. Now you have to clean,
right. Now
you know?
we hear all that good. And also, I do think like it was super important to me that my kids, because I don't drink, knew that it existed and that I did it from day one. So I don't do it in front of them, but they know that I do it. They obviously know I wrote a book about it. They know they've seen it around the house. Like, that destigmatizing is really, really an important one.
Why don't you do it in front of them?
Yeah, you know, I've had this conversation with myself before, and like, it's partially because there's still stigma, for sure, and I can't quite get rid of that, even despite the fact that this is like a funny story, my 14-year-old was in 7th grade health class, and the whole lecture on drugs and alcohol, and they did a good, responsible job, you know, we're in the Bay Area, it was a good presentation, but the teacher kept saying marijuana. So my kid raised her hand and said, I just want to say one thing. The word marijuana has racist undertones, so if you could use cannabis instead, that would be appreciated. So I was like, very proud. But also, back to like the question, is like, I think also, you know, totally honestly, smoking is not the best use of your body, right? You are still inhaling. It's interesting because lots of studies have been done on cannabis smoking versus tobacco. It's not going to cause cancer. It's not going to cause emphysema. It doesn't have the same effect.
It actually may help with Alzheimer's too.
There's certain things that it helps with, and in fact, there's been one study that says it improves lung function, but it's still an inhalant. Yeah, right. It's still an inhalant, right? You're irritating your lungs whenever you're inhaling something that shouldn't go into your lungs, and so I do think that's the piece of it for me.
Yeah, I think if you didn't largely smoke it, you would, you know.
Yeah, they have seen me have a gummy before.
And my kid will throw the football with me. He's like, "Oh, Dad, your book's coming out." He's like, she's like part of the weed maps or something. And he knows that weed map from the billboards. You know, it's like he just this is the world we live in. I'm like, not taking notes, by the way, kid. But I'll make that call, not you. So. Yeah. Any other questions?
How did you guys partner with Kiva? Did you just reach out to them, or like how does that work?
I mean, do you want to what's? Well, I mean, yeah. You moms met at a.
Yeah. So I also am the owner of a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and the 12-year-old is a little circus aerialist, and in her class is another little circus aerialist, and her mom is like a bigwig at Kiva, and we just got to talking. And one of the reasons why Kiva is super excited about partnering with us is that, they want modern day messengers who support their brand, which is responsible adults that use cannabis responsibly. And so they were really excited about us bringing the message that we're bringing to you to their customers.
Let's say learning a lot more about the cannabis industry. It's a relatively young industry, and it's the people we talk to are just lovely. How can we help? What do you need? We love this idea of this book, and it's interesting. And there's a lot of we are in a golden age, but every golden age has a lot of work to do. And we have stuff on equity and inclusion, and we have putting your money where your politics are. Buy from black-owned dispensaries, and New York is doing some good things, and so it's still a young industry, and there's a lot of work to be done. But there's good people, a lot of good people working at it, and they will really just open their minds and their hearts to us.
One last question.
Well, we want to thank you. We want to say this about Green Apple. Just an incredible treasure of an independent bookstore in San Francisco. So we hope that you support. You are here, and they keep their lights on, and they do this. They give us refreshments. So I hope you walk out of this. Can I borrow that? Thank you. With a book from this store. This is a good choice, And maybe there's a birthday coming up, or a lot of parents. I had a lot of friends when can I get this to my parents? They have so many questions. Even my own parents, who really now they use it for nausea and for sleep, and they got high literally once in the 70s with their kooky chiropractor friend. And so, the chiropractors. But this is a good gift. You can walk into a party instead of a bottle of wine of this, and now you have a conversation. And so we appreciate that. So we want to mostly support Green Apple Books, and I want to say this book. So, but then it's a rainy night here in the Bay Area. You all came out here. You parked. We really appreciate it. Your time is valuable, and it's been real fun to be here with you. And the Shamrock afterwards, it's just around the corner.
Let's get one more hand for Larry. Thank you so much for all your kind words about this place that I love very much. We have books available at the front. You can get them there. Bring them back here to our authors where they will sign them. We have other books if you want to look at those too. And we started that bottle of white wine, so now we have to finish it. That is your task. And feel free, make yourselves comfortable. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.